Assalamu alaikum, let's explore this Islamic topic together. Hey, so, you know how we were talking about Islam the other day? Well, something I find absolutely fascinating is the incredible resilience shown by the Prophet Muhammad. Peace be upon him, and his early followers in the face of 7th-century Arabian polytheism. It's not just a historical footnote. It's absolutely central to understanding Islam's origins and its enduring power. Imagine the setting. 7th century Arabia. It wasn't this unified, monotheistic place we think of today. It was a patchwork of tribes, each with their own gods and goddesses, often carved into idols and worshipped in elaborate temples like those at Makkah. Think lots of small, fiercely independent communities, each with their own beliefs and power structures, kind of like a bunch of small countries all squabbling next to each other, but with a religious dimension that made the conflicts even more intense. The dominant religion was polytheism. People worshipped a whole pantheon of gods and goddesses, many associated with nature, fertility, and tribal protection. These weren't just abstract concepts, they were real, tangible things. Idols were placed in the Kaaba, a sacred building in Makkah, and these idols were the of pilgrimages and rituals. It was a deeply ingrained part of their social life and economy, intertwined with trade routes and alliances. Think about it, their entire worldview, their social order, even their livelihoods, were built around this system. Now, imagine someone comes along and says, "Nope, all that? It's wrong. There's only one God, Allah." That's essentially what the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did. He proclaimed the oneness of God, Tawhid, a radical message in a deeply polytheistic society. It wasn't just a philosophical difference. It was a direct challenge to the very fabric of their society. It threatened the power of the tribal elites who controlled the religious sites and benefited from the existing system. This wasn't a gentle suggestion either. The opposition was fierce. The Prophet faced ridicule, persecution, boycotts, and even assassination attempts. His early followers were ostracized, tortured, and forced to flee their homes. They were essentially a tiny minority fighting against a powerful and entrenched system. Think David and Goliath, but on a societal level. And the stakes were far higher than just a fight. The Meccans, the powerful tribe who controlled Makkah, were particularly hostile. They were deeply invested in maintaining their polytheistic beliefs in the economic and political power that came with it. They saw the Prophet's message as a threat to their way of life and their authority. They subjected the early Muslims to immense pressure, hoping to crush their burgeoning faith. The story of the Prophet's migration, Hijrah, to Medina is a pivotal moment. Facing relentless persecution in Makkah, he and his followers migrated to Medina, a city looking for leadership and stability. This wasn't just a move, it was a strategic shift. In Medina, he built a community, the principles of Islam, creating a new society structured around faith and justice. It was a completely different model. A society, the principles of equality and brotherhood, regardless of tribal affiliation. Even in Medina, the challenges didn't end. The Prophet faced wars and battles against various tribes who opposed his message. These weren't just skirmishes, they were existential struggles for survival. But throughout these trials, the resilience of the Prophet and his early followers remained unbroken. Their unwavering faith, their commitment to their beliefs, and their willingness to sacrifice everything for the sake of their faith is truly remarkable. Their courage in the face of overwhelming odds is what laid the foundation for Islam. The significance of their resilience? It shows the power of belief. the strength of conviction, and the enduring nature of a message that challenges the status quo. It's a testament to the power of a single voice speaking truth to power, even when that power is entrenched and seemingly invincible. The Prophet's struggle against polytheism isn't just a historical event. It's a living example of faith, perseverance, and the transformative power of a new idea, a new way of life, that ultimately changed the course of history. It's a story that continues to inspire hope and courage in people across the globe. That's why it's so central to Islamic history and faith. It's the foundational story of resilience, faith, and the ultimate triumph of truth. Hey, so, you wanna know about the Prophet Muhammad's early days, facing down all that polytheism in 7th century Arabia? It's a crazy story, seriously. Imagine this, you're in Makkah, a bustling city, but it's not like any modern city you know. Think ancient, dusty, full of intense tribal rivalries, and surrounded by desert. And the religious scene? Wild. They weren't monotheistic like we understand it today. Arabs worshipped a whole pantheon of gods and goddesses, think hundreds, maybe thousands of idols. Each tribe had its own patron deity. And there were major gods like Hubal, who was a pretty big deal at the Kaaba. That's the ancient stone structure, still there in Makkah today. You know, the one Muslims circumambulate during Hajj. Back then, it was jam-packed with idols. It was less of a place of worship in the sense we understand now, and more like a religious trading post, a shrine to all these different gods. Everyone was kind of jostling for the favor of their chosen deity. Think of it like a really intense, ancient Olympics, except instead of medals, you were hoping for rain, a good harvest, or victory in war. And the way they appeased these gods? Lots of rituals, sacrifices, offerings. It was a complex system, interwoven with their social structure, their tribal identities, and their whole way of life. It wasn't just about religion. It was the very fabric of their society. Now, enter the Prophet Muhammad. He's already known for his honesty, his kindness, his reputation for being someone who could be trusted to mediate disputes, a really respected figure within his own tribe, the Banu Hashim. But his call to monotheism, the absolute, unwavering belief in one God, Allah, was completely disruptive. It wasn't just a new religion. It was a radical challenge to the very core of their established order. Imagine the initial reaction: confusion, skepticism, maybe even amusement. Some people might have been intrigued, others likely dismissed him as a madman or a troublemaker. The established religious elite, the custodians of the Kaaba and its idols, saw him as a direct threat to their power and influence. His message, this simple, powerful message of surrendering entirely to one God, was a direct challenge to their wealth, their status, and their way of life. So, what began? It began with quiet, persistent preaching. He started by speaking to his closest family and friends, gradually expanding his circle of influence. He spoke of justice, compassion, and the oneness of God, ideas that resonated with some, especially those who felt marginalized or exploited by the existing power structures. There was a strong emphasis on the social justice aspect of his message, equality. The importance of treating others with kindness, regardless of their tribe or social standing. This resonated deeply, but as his message spread, the opposition hardened. The Meccan elite, the powerful Quraysh tribe, felt their grip on power slipping. The Prophet's followers, the early Muslims, faced increasing persecution. Think boycotts, social ostracization, verbal abuse, even physical violence. The Prophet himself suffered tremendously. He faced mockery, insults, threats, and even stones thrown at him. His followers were persecuted, too, facing economic hardship, torture, and even exile. This wasn't a simple, bad guys vs. good guys scenario, either. There were nuances, internal disagreements, and shifting alliances within both camps. Some within the Quraysh tribe weren't entirely comfortable with the escalating persecution. Some were curious about the new faith. Others were driven by political expediency. And a few even found themselves converted to Islam. But the core of the resistance was the deep-seated fear of losing control. The traditional power structures, tied to the polytheistic system, were threatened by the rapidly growing number of Muslims who were embracing a new way of life. One centered on faith, justice, and equality. The Prophet's resilience was extraordinary. Faced with constant adversity, he never wavered in his belief or his mission. His unwavering faith, his courage, and his steadfast commitment to his message inspired countless people to join his cause. Even in the face of overwhelming odds. The early years were a struggle, a constant fight for survival, both physically and spiritually. But those initial years of resistance, those moments of quiet preaching and unwavering faith, laid the foundation for the eventual spread of Islam, a faith that would transcend the boundaries of 7th-century Arabia and shape the course of history. It truly is a compelling and inspiring story. Wouldn't you agree? It speaks to the power of faith, the importance of resilience, and the enduring human capacity for hope, even in the darkest of times. Hey, so you wanna know about the Prophet Muhammad's struggle against polytheism in 7th-century Arabia? It's a wild story, honestly. Forget Hollywood. Real-life drama, full of intense pressure, incredible faith, and some seriously tough choices. We're talking the middle chapters here. After the initial revelations, but before the major conquests, the real meat of the resilience story. Imagine Makkah in the early 7th century. It's bustling, a major trading hub, but it's also a city steeped in polytheism. Think hundreds of idols, all housed in the Kaaba, this ancient stone structure. Kind of like a giant, sacred shrine. People worshipped a whole pantheon of gods and goddesses, alongside ancestral spirits and other deities. It was a deeply ingrained system, part of their culture, their social fabric, their very identity. It wasn't just about religion. It was intertwined with everything, their politics, economics, even their social standing. Think of it like a complex web. And the Prophet was inked to unravel it, thread by painstaking thread. Now, the Prophet Muhammad wasn't inked to violently overthrow everything overnight. He started by preaching monotheism, the belief in one God, Allah, quietly, to his closest family and friends. But this wasn't just a simple, hey, there's only one God. It was a radical challenge to their established worldview. And it directly challenged the power structures of Makkah. The ruling clans, the wealthy merchants, they were all invested in the polytheistic system. The idols weren't just statues, they were symbols of power, status, and tradition. By challenging them, the Prophet was challenging their authority, their wealth, and their very way of life. So, things got intense. Early on, he faced ridicule, mockery, and outright hostility. Some people just didn't understand. Others were threatened by his message. And some were simply resistant to change. Think about it. Imagine someone coming to your town and saying everything you believe is wrong. That's the kind of resistance he faced. His followers, these early Muslims, were often persecuted, ostracized, even physically harmed. They were a small minority, facing down a powerful and entrenched system. One of the most striking examples of this resilience is the Prophet's own unwavering commitment. He faced immense pressure, threats on his life, social exclusion, economic hardship, but he never wavered in his belief or his mission. He continued preaching, despite the constant danger, demonstrating remarkable patience and perseverance. He didn't just preach, he lived his beliefs, setting an example of piety, compassion, and justice that attracted more followers, despite the risks involved. And his followers, oh man, they were incredible. They showed incredible courage and sacrifice. Think of those early converts, facing persecution, losing their livelihoods, and sometimes even facing death, all for their faith. It wasn't some blind faith, either. It was a belief born out of the Prophet's message, his character, and the strength of their community. They found strength in their shared belief, supporting each other through hardship and persecution. Their resilience wasn't individual, it was collective, forged in the fires of adversity. It wasn't a linear path, either. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, even temporary retreats. The migration to Medina, the Hijra, for example, wasn't a simple escape. It was a strategic move, a response to the escalating threats in Makkah. Medina offered a more welcoming environment, allowing the Muslim community to grow and organize. But the conflict certainly didn't end there. In Medina, the Prophet established a new community, principles of justice, equality, and brotherhood. He didn't just preach, he built a society his teachings. A society that showed an alternative to the polytheistic system of Makkah. But even in Medina, the challenges continued. The Prophet faced conflicts with other tribes, internal disputes, and ongoing resistance from the Meccans. It wasn't simply a matter of preaching. It was a struggle for survival in the establishment of a new social order. The Battle of Badr, for example, is often cited as a turning point. It wasn't just a military victory. It was a symbol of the growing strength of the Muslim community in their ability to defend themselves. But even after victories like Badr, the struggle continued. The path to establishing Islam wasn't a smooth, straight road. It was a long, winding journey, filled with obstacles and challenges, requiring continuous resilience, both individually and collectively. Ultimately, the Prophet's resilience, and the resilience of his followers, was a testament to their faith and their unwavering belief in their message. It wasn't just about converting people. It was about transforming a society, a culture, and a worldview. It was a slow, painstaking, fraught with danger, but fueled by a belief in something greater than themselves. It's a story of incredible human strength, perseverance, and the power of faith in the face of overwhelming odds. And that's just the middle chapters. There's so much more to this story. But hopefully, this gives you a taste of its complexity and drama. Hey, so we've been talking about the Prophet Muhammad and his early followers, right? And how incredibly tough it was for them in 7th century Arabia. We've covered the opposition, the persecution, but how did it all end? How did their resilience, their unwavering belief, actually play out in the face of such deeply ingrained polytheism? It's a fascinating story, because it wasn't a sudden, dramatic victory. It was a gradual shift. A slow but steady building of influence against a powerful and established system of belief. Imagine, Arabia at that time was a land of powerful tribes, each with their own gods and goddesses, their own rituals and traditions passed down for generations. Think of it like a giant, Complicated tapes woven from hundreds of different threads, each thread representing a different deity or tribal belief. The Kaaba in Makkah, the central shrine of the pre-Islamic religion, was filled with idols representing all these different gods. A chaotic jumble of spiritual beliefs. The Prophet Muhammad, however, brought a radically different message: monotheism. The idea of one God, Allah, the all-powerful, all-knowing creator of everything, was a stark contrast to the polytheistic world around him. It wasn't just a different religion, it was a complete restructuring of their worldview. And this was where the incredible resilience of the early Muslims came into play. Early on, it was incredibly dangerous. The Prophet and his closest followers faced constant threats, boycotts, ridicule, even physical violence. They were ostracized by their own tribes. Their families were divided, and many suffered greatly for their faith. Remember the story of the migration to Medina. The Hijrah, that was a direct consequence of the persecution in Makkah becoming unbearable. They weren't just facing religious opposition. They were up against powerful tribal leaders who saw the Prophet's message as a threat to their authority and influence. Their entire social structure was this polytheistic system, and the Prophet's message was shaking it to its core. But even in Medina, where they found refuge and built a community, the challenges continued. They faced skirmishes and battles with the Meccan tribes who continued to oppose Islam. Think of it less as wars, and more as constant skirmishes and defensive battles. A struggle for survival and the right to practice their religion. It was a testament to their courage and their belief in their cause. They weren't looking for conquest. They were defending themselves and their right to worship Allah as they saw fit. The turning point, in a way, came with the Battle of Badr, one of the most significant early battles in Islamic history. It wasn't just a military victory, it was a symbolic triumph of faith over adversity. It showed the Meccans, and the rest of Arabia, that the Muslims weren't easily defeated. That their belief was strong enough to motivate them to fight for what they believed in. Following a series of battles, the tide slowly began to turn. The message of Islam, with its emphasis on justice, equality, and the oneness of God, began to resonate with people from various tribes. Slowly but surely, individuals and then entire tribes started converting to Islam. It wasn't a forced conversion. It was a gradual shift in belief. A recognition of the power and truth of the Prophet's message. Finally, in 630 CE, the Prophet Muhammad, with a sizable army of followers, entered Makkah peacefully. This wasn't a violent conquest, but rather a triumphant return. The idols in the Kaaba were symbolizing the dismantling of the old polytheistic system. This wasn't the end of conflict, but it marked a significant shift in the power dynamic. The message of Islam, once marginalized and persecuted, had gained a strong foothold in the heart of Arabia. The resilience of the Prophet and his followers wasn't just about physical strength. It was about unwavering faith, perseverance in the face of overwhelming odds, and a powerful message that resonated with people's hearts and minds. It was a testament to the strength of conviction and the ability of a small group of believers to challenge and overcome a deeply entrenched system of belief. The conclusion wasn't a sudden overthrow, but a slow, steady, and ultimately successful transformation. It's a story of faith, resilience, and ultimately, a remarkable change in the cultural and religious landscape of Arabia. And that, my friend, is a story worth remembering. Hey, so you were asking about the Prophet Muhammad's resilience against the polytheism of 7th century Arabia, and what that means for Muslims today? It's a huge topic, right? But let's break it down. Make it relatable. Imagine Arabia back then, a land of powerful tribes. Fiercely independent, each with their own gods and goddesses. Think of it like a patchwork quilt, each patch a different clan, worshipping a different pantheon. They weren't evil people, necessarily, just deeply ingrained in their traditions. Their religion was a mix of ancestral worship, nature spirits, and powerful deities like Allat, Al-Azza, and Manat. These were huge figures, considered goddesses of immense power. Think of it like having your own family saint, but multiplied 1,000 times, with each tribe having its own set. These weren't just little figurines. These deities were intricately woven into their social fabric. Their lives revolved around these gods, rituals, offerings, pilgrimages to sacred places like the Kaaba in Makkah. The Kaaba, by the way, was already a significant site, a kind of pre-Islamic shrine where various tribes left their idols. It was a chaotic mix of religious beliefs, a vibrant but ultimately fragmented spiritual landscape. Now, picture Muhammad, a man raised in this very environment, suddenly receiving revelations from God. He's told to proclaim a completely different message, a monotheistic message. The absolute oneness of God, Allah. This was revolutionary, absolutely earth-shattering. He wasn't just challenging a few beliefs. He was challenging the very foundation of their society, their power structures, and their worldview. Can you imagine the pressure? He's going up against extremely powerful figures, tribal leaders who held immense sway, people who profited from the religious system, the priests, the idol makers. They weren't just going to politely disagree. They saw him as a threat, someone undermining their authority and their way of life. So the prophet faced immense opposition. He wasn't magically protected. He was ridiculed, persecuted, boycotted, threatened, and his followers were too. He and his small community were driven from Makkah to Medina, the Hijra, a pivotal event in Islamic history. Even in Medina, establishing a new community wasn't a walk in the park. He had to negotiate alliances, navigate tribal conflicts, and build a whole new society. His teachings. Think of the sheer courage it must have taken. He wasn't just preaching, he was facing down immense hostility, personal danger, and social isolation. He lost loved ones along the way. It wasn't a glorious, easy victory. It was a long, arduous struggle, full of challenges and setbacks. But through it all, he persevered. His resilience wasn't about blind faith. It was about unwavering conviction in his message and the strength he found in God. He relied on prayer, patience, and strategic diplomacy. He didn't shy away from conflict when necessary, but also employed wisdom and negotiation to build alliances. He displayed incredible empathy and understanding even towards those who persecuted him. So, what does all this teach Muslims today? It's not just about historical accuracy. It's about the core values it embodies. It teaches us about the importance of unwavering faith. The Prophet's resilience stems from his absolute belief in God's message. It's a reminder that faith isn't passive. It's active, requiring steadfastness in the face of adversity. The power of perseverance. His journey wasn't a quick fix. It took years of struggle. It shows us that change doesn't happen overnight. It demands dedication and persistence. The significance of community. The early Muslim community, despite the hardships, stood by the Prophet. It highlights the crucial role of community in supporting faith and navigating challenges. The need for wisdom and diplomacy. The Prophet didn't simply fight. He also negotiated and built alliances. This emphasizes the importance of tact and strategic thinking, even amidst conflict. The value of patience and tolerance. Even in the face of immense opposition, the Prophet displayed remarkable patience and, where possible, tolerance. This showcases the importance of these virtues in building a just and peaceful society. Ultimately, the Prophet's resilience against 7th-century Arabian polytheism teaches us that standing up for what you believe in, even when it's incredibly difficult, is crucial. It's a reminder that true faith is tested, and that perseverance, combined with wisdom, compassion, and unwavering belief, can overcome even the most formidable obstacles. It's a powerful lesson applicable to any generation, any challenge we face today. It's a story that inspires hope, courage, and a commitment to righteousness. It's more than just history, it's a living testament to the human spirit's capacity for resilience. Goodbye, may Allah bless us all. That's our discussion for today.